Imagine waking up tomorrow and the price of everything, your gas, your groceries, your electricity bill doubles overnight. Imagine ships the size of skyscrapers, frozen in the ocean, not moving, waiting, afraid. Imagine a strip of water just 33 kilometers wide, narrower than the distance between some city neighborhoods, holding the entire global economy hostage. That is not a movie. That is not a war game simulation. That is happening right now. Iran has shut down the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most critical choke points on the face of this planet, and the world is scrambling, panicking, and praying someone can figure out what comes next. This is the story of how a narrow channel of water became the most dangerous place on Earth and why you should be paying attention, no matter where you live. Let's start with geography, because before you can understand this crisis, you need to understand what exactly is at stake. The Strait of Hormuz sits between Iran to the north and Oman to the south. It connects the Persian Gulf, surrounded by the world's richest oil-producing nations, to the Gulf of Oman and the open sea beyond. At its narrowest point, it is just 33 kilometers wide. The actual shipping lane, the corridor where tankers move, is only 3 kilometers in each direction. 3 kilometers, that is all that separates global energy civilization from collapse. Through that tiny sliver of water flows approximately 20 million barrels of crude oil every single day. That is roughly 20% of the entire world's daily oil supply. Saudi Arabia's oil passes through it. Iraq's oil, Kuwait's oil, Qatar's liquefied natural gas, weighs exports, all of it funneled through this single, narrow, vulnerable passage. If the Strait of Hormuz closes, fully closes, the world does not just slow down, it begins to choke. And as of late February 2026, that choking has begun. To understand the crisis, you need to understand what triggered it. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched a series of coordinated military strikes on Iran. Those strikes killed Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, one of the most seismic events in Middle Eastern history in decades. Iran did not sit quietly. Within hours of the attacks, Iranese Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, began broadcasting warnings on maritime radio frequencies to every vessel in the region. The message was chilling in its simplicity. No ship is permitted to pass the Strait of Hormuz. Those words, transmitted over the airwaves, did not constitute a formal legal blockade, but they didn't need to, because what followed was something even more powerful than a traditional military closure. It was fear. Here is the part that should genuinely shock you, because Iran did not need warships, mines, or a full naval confrontation to shut down one of the world's most vital waterways. They used drones, cheap, relatively simple drones. Within days of the IRGC's warnings, ships started getting hit. On March 1st, an oil tanker called the Skylight was struck by a projectile near Oman's coast. 2 Indian crew members were killed. 3 others were injured. The rest of the crew evacuated into the ocean. Another vessel, the Macdevium, was struck by a drone boat that sparked a fire in its engine room. An Indian sailor died. 21 crew members had to abandon ship. A Thai bulk carrier was attacked. Then more ships. Then more. In total, within the first 2 weeks, over a dozen ships were struck or threatened. 5 crew members were dead. Fires, explosions, and evacuations became daily news from the strait. And then the shipping companies made their decision. If you can't insure a ship, you can't sail it. And insurers looked at those attacks, looked at the IRGC's warnings, looked at drone footage of ships on fire, and they pulled out. Insurance premiums had already reached 6-year highs. After the attacks began, many companies stopped offering coverage for the route entirely. Major global shipping giants, including Maersk and Hapag-Lloyd, suspended their Middle East routes. Without insurance, no captain will sail. Without ships sailing, no oil moves. Traffic through the strait dropped 70% almost overnight. Then it dropped to nearly zero. One analyst described it perfectly. It's really an insurance-driven shutdown. Iran never needed to physically chain the water. They just needed to make it terrifying enough that the industry walked away on its own. Let us talk about what is actually being blocked. Every day the strait remains closed. Approximately 20 million barrels of oil do not reach their destination. 15 to 20 million barrels per day gone, frozen, sitting in tanks in the Gulf with nowhere to go. That is 20% of the world's daily oil supply, vanished from the market. Europe gets 12 to 14% of its liquefied natural gas through this strait, primarily from Qatar. Asia is even more exposed. China gets roughly 40% of its oil imports through the Strait of Hormuz. India, Japan, and South Korea are heavily reliant on it as well. In 2024, 84% of all oil leaving the Persian Gulf was destined for Asian markets. And Qatar, one of the world's single largest providers of natural gas, had its own production facilities struck by Iranian drones, halting output at the critical Ras Laffan industrial city. The International Energy Agency took the unprecedented step of releasing 400 million barrels of oil from global strategic reserves just to keep prices from going completely vertical. And yet, oil prices have still risen by double digits since the conflict began. Global benchmark Brent crude surged more than 10% in days. Gasoline prices in the United States spiked by more than 50 cents per gallon, and that is in a country that produces more oil than any nation on Earth. Imagine what it looks like in countries entirely dependent on Gulf imports. Irani's ONURG put it bluntly and brutally: you will not be able to artificially lower the price of oil. Expect oil at $200 per barrel, $200 per barrel. For context, the last time oil came close to that level, it helped trigger a global financial crisis. Here is something most people are not thinking about yet, but they will be soon. This crisis is not just about gasoline prices. The Strait of Hormuz does not only carry oil, it carries the raw materials of modern life. Fertilizer: roughly 1/3 of all global fertilizer trade passes through the strait. Fertilizer prices have already surged dramatically, and this is happening right at the beginning of the spring planting season in the American Midwest. The crops that feed hundreds of millions of people rely on fertilizer that is now stuck behind an Iranian drone threat. Food inflation is coming. Petrochemicals, the building blocks of plastics, rubber, synthetic fabrics, pharmaceuticals, and electronics, all flow through this channel. The Asian garment industry is now under acute pressure because the petrochemicals it uses to make synthetic clothes are no longer arriving. Aluminum, the way, is a major producer, and its aluminum exports flow through the strait. Construction, aerospace, automotive industries, all of them will feel this. Shipping containers: when ships are rerouted, ports become congested. Supply chains that depend on precise timing begin to snap. The disruption in one ocean ripples into delays at ports across multiple continents within 2 to 5 weeks. One logistics expert described the cascading effect simply: "I've seen a lot and tend to be level-headed on large market moves, and I still think the market is underestimating the circumstances here." So what is the world doing about it? President Donald Trump has publicly urged ships to continue sailing through the strait, promising safety and escort. He announced plans to offer risk insurance to oil tankers and suggested that the U.S. Navy could escort commercial vessels through the passage. He has called on allies including China, France, and the United Kingdom to send warships to help reopen the shipping lane, and he has claimed that many countries have already agreed to do so. But experts are raising hard questions about whether any of this will actually work. Military escorts are theoretically possible. Analysts suggest that 7 to 8 destroyers providing air cover could potentially escort 3 to 4 commercial ships per day through the strait. But doing that sustainably for weeks or months requires enormous resources and enormous risk, and that is assuming Iran does not escalate further. The financial insurance plan faces its own problems. The U.S. Development Finance Corporation has legal limitations. It must ensure companies meet environmental and social standards, and it operates within a finite budget. It simply cannot ensure all maritime trade in a war zone indefinitely. And even if insurance becomes available, many companies will still refuse to send their ships into an active conflict zone where vessels are being hit by drone strikes. As one shipping CEO put it, the priority for the industry is not just moving cargo. It is protecting the lives of seafarers, the value of vessels, and preventing what could become a catastrophic environmental disaster if a fully loaded supertanker was seriously hit in that narrow, sensitive waterway. Are there alternative routes? Partially, Saudi Arabia has been pumping oil westward through its east-west pipeline to the Red Sea port of Yanbu. The way has been diverting exports through its Abu Dhabi pipeline to Fujairah on the Arabian Sea. But the combined capacity of these alternative routes leaves a deficit of roughly 12 million barrels per day, and the Red Sea route itself is vulnerable to attack from Houthi forces in Yemen, who have already demonstrated their willingness to strike shipping in that region. The bypass ports of Oman, Duqm, and Salalah have also been targeted by Iranian drone strikes. Fuel storage tanks have been damaged. Insurance risk zones have been extended. The escape routes are being systematically threatened. While the entire world will feel this crisis, some nations are facing an existential emergency. Pakistan gets 99% of its liquefied natural gas from Qatar, and the way both countries now caught in the conflict. With limited storage and no realistic alternative supply, Pakistan faces potential blackouts and economic collapse if this continues. Bangladesh is in a nearly identical position, with 72% of its LNG coming from the same threatened region. India, South Korea, Japan, and the Philippines are all deeply exposed. Thailand is flagged by analysts as one of the single most vulnerable nations on Earth right now. It has the largest net oil imports as a share of GDP in all of Asia, and every 10% rise in oil prices directly wounds its national economy. Europe, which had already been scrambling to diversify its energy since the Russia-Ukraine war, now faces another potential energy supply crisis. Analysts warn that if the strait does not reopen, Europe will be looking at a major shock that will test the limits of its strategic reserves and diplomatic creativity. Even China, which has enormous oil stockpiles, roughly 7.6 million tons of LNG reserves as of late February, will be forced into a brutal competition with Europe and the rest of Asia for replacement supply from the Atlantic. Prices across the Pacific Basin will surge. Beijing avoids outright shortage, but it will not avoid pain and Iran itself. Ironically, Iran has not stopped all oil shipments. Iranian and Chinese flagged vessels continue to move through the strait. Iran is still selling its own oil to China, its largest customer, as one analyst noted bluntly. Iran needs money. It cannot afford to destroy the one economic lifeline it has left. That tension between using the strait as a weapon and needing it as a revenue source may ultimately become Iran's own vulnerability. The world is now at a crossroads that historians may one day mark as a turning point. The last time the global economy faced something this severe in energy terms was the oil embargo of the 1970s, when Arab nations cut off oil exports to the West and sent the world into a recession that reshaped economies, governments and geopolitics for a generation. Some analysts believe the strait will begin partially reopening within weeks, as Iran's own economic needs force a de-escalation. Others believe the conflict is far from over and that the situation could remain volatile for months. What is certain is this: every day the strait remains closed, the pressure builds on oil markets, on food prices, on economies already strained by years of inflation and disruption, on the populations of dozens of nations who had no vote in this war and no say in what happens next. A single waterway 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point has brought the modern world to a moment of genuine reckoning. Not with weapons of mass destruction, not with nuclear bombs or invading armies, with drones and fear. And the terrifying realization that the entire architecture of global civilization passes through a corridor that any determined actor can threaten, disrupt, and hold hostage. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a geography lesson, it is a warning, and the world is only just beginning to listen.